Hello and welcome back to another basics video, and today we'll be talking about more modeling. But before we start, we actually have to mention this, that Blender 3.0 is finally out live. This is the second week of December 2021, and I urge you not to update to that version yet, but if you already have, then it's totally fine. I think it shouldn't be a problem, but just to make sure if we are going to be on the same page, I'm using a version before 3.0, which is 2.93.1. Basically, I'm using an older version to make sure that nothing breaks during the tutorial. So I'm just going to stick to this older version for now. If you already have the new version of Blender, I guess it's totally fine. Eventually, I'll update to that at some point of my tutorials for the house. So do take note of that when it happens. But currently, I'm on 2.93.1. on this video, so if you're gonna follow, make sure that you know that this is my version. So without further ado, let's jump into a brand new general file where we are going to talk about this simple cube again. So for the longest time, we have been talking about points, about edges, and about faces, but there's one word that I hardly use, but it's going to come up more and more often because we're doing modeling. It's the word called polygon. And what is a polygon? It is this thing. Basically, it just means that if you have edges and the edges are bounded together, sort of enclosed, which can make a face, that face is called a polygon. So this face right here is also called a polygon. If you have a triangle, it's also called a polygon. And you can have as many sides as you want. So technically, you can have a polygon that has a million sides. As long as it encloses each other to make a face, that thing can be called a polygon. But a very important fact that you need to take note when you do 3D modeling is that you always want to make sure that your faces have 4 sides and nothing more and nothing less. You can do triangles, but it may complicate the model in certain ways down the road. So you always want to try and keep it to quads, which is a rectangle or a square, something with 4 points. So such as this example right here, we have a cube and this is a face and it has 4 points. This is great. If you see your model having an extra point here, somewhere else which has more than 4 points that bounds a face together, something bad will be going to happen to it later on down the road. So it's something to take note of right now when we start modeling, so that you do not start to create this kind of faces that have more than 4 sides. So currently in the edit mode, I'm going to select my face and I'm going to show you the first thing, which is called an extrusion. So the hotkey is E. So what an extrusion is, when you press E, it basically creates new faces from the previous face that you selected. So you can extrude stuff. The word extrusion kind of explains itself as well. So it basically extrudes out. It always extrudes out. You can also extrude out, scale it, and also extrude it in. As you can see, it creates new faces. So this is sort of a very simple way of how you can create holes in your models. So for example, right here, I can press E to extrude, and without selecting anything or pressing anything on my keyboard right now, I'm just going to press the S key and move my mouse, and you can see right now I'm creating an extrusion, but it's sort of aligned to the planar surface of the previous face that I just selected. And from here, I can do another extrusion downwards to create a hole. So this method of extrusion is a really basic form of modeling that you can use this to create details on your models, be it pipes or furniture, whatever you want. And the next thing I'm going to show you is called an inset. So remember how we literally just did this thing where we press E and press S and we scaled this thing in. So it's an extrusion and a scaling down. You can actually do the same thing in one button. So with a face selected right here, I'm just going to show you. I'm going to press the hotkey I, and this is called an inset. So I press I and I just move my mouse and it sort of creates this inset. We sort of did this on the window tutorial in how to model your house. And an inset is basically like an extrusion and a scale, but it's combined on one key. So you can do things really quickly. With this method, you save yourself from doing 2 steps. And if you're modeling like a car or something, it's going to be like 1,000 steps. So multiply that button clicking by 1,000 and you save a lot of time. So now we know we have extrude and we have the inset function. I'm going to show you another method, and this involves the edges. So if I select the edge, I can do a Control B and that will create a bevel. So bevel is a really interesting thing that you can do on your edges. So make sure you're in edge mode. And for this example, I'm just going to select the entire loop here by pressing the Alt. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and left mouse button, and you just select the entire edge loop. And I'm going to add a bevel here. I can do a Control B. And once I do that, I'm not going to do anything else but move my mouse. And as you can see, when I move my mouse, it creates a bevel. And when I press down the left mouse button to confirm the bevel that I want, the like sort of the width, there's actually a little property menu right here where you can open up and you can actually still control the width more, and you can even add segments. So this is a really interesting tool to create smoothed out effect, and it's going to help you when you start to create drawers or create cabinets that you want smooth edges. This is how you are going to do it. So to recap on what we just learned, we learned the extrusion tool, which is going to be used on the faces. You can also use it on edges, but I suggest you using on faces right now because it creates less of a problem. So for example, if you actually extrude an edge, it's totally fine, but then it's going to create issues later because it's sort of this is like a really thin thing, right? So if you want this to have some thickness, you're gonna have to extrude this downwards. And then what do you do with this, right? What do you do with this gap? How are you going to join it there? So everything's going to get more complicated. So if you're going to do a modeling like this, I suggest you do not extrude the edges. Instead, just stick to faces for now. So let me just do the quick recap. Sorry, I digressed a bit. We just did the extrusion. We just learned how to do the inset to create more details, and we also learned about how to select edge loops by holding the Alt key and left mouse button on an edge. It will select the entire edge loop, and Control B for bevel. And of course, with every action that you make, sometimes you have this property menu on the bottom left hand side, and it will allow you to add more details to your action that you just made. So something else really quickly, we have a cube here. I'm going to select all the edges by pressing 2 into edge mode and pressing A to select all edges. And I'm going to do a bevel, Control B. I'm going to adjust the bevel width. I'm happy with this. I'm going to confirm this by pressing the left mouse button down. And as you can see, we have this nice little bevel, but when I jump out of edit mode, you can see that the bevel isn't really smooth. So how do you make this smooth? Well, there's a whole other topic on that, but we're going to stick to the simple solution right now, which is to right click, shade smooth. And this is the fastest way we can get a smooth object like this. If you wanted to revert this and go back to what it was before, you can just right click and shade flat, and this will revert it back to what it was before. So we're going to start again with a basic cube, and we're going to go into the edit mode, and we're going to talk about this thing called the edge loop. The hotkey is Control R, and as you can see, these things are edge loops. So what are edge loops? It is basically creating edges to loop around the model. That's why it's called edge loop. And if it cannot loop around the model to come back to the originating point, it basically just stops wherever the maximum we can go to. So sometimes the edge loop doesn't close up itself into one complete loop, but instead it stops off halfway. So right now we have this edge loop created here, and as you can see we have these yellow lines, and they basically indicate where to place the edge loops. So we are going to place it here, for example, along this edge over here. And how do you place it? You just press left mouse button once, and as you notice, the color has changed, and you can actually move your edge loop along the edge that you're creating the edge loop on. So if you wanted this to be here, you can just press the left mouse button again to confirm where your placement is, and there you go, it is done. So what if you wanted to pop this back to the middle position where you once created it? So let me just show you again. I'm going to create an edge loop here, Control R, and after I left mouse button to select it once, I'm going to click on the right mouse button once to pop it back to the middle position where it was created. So let's do this again right here, Control R, left mouse button once. As you can see, I can move it around, but I'm just going to pop it back here by pressing the right mouse button instead. So this is the basics of creating edge loops. And how do you delete an edge loop? Very simple, same thing, go into edge mode. Remember how we were able to select an entire edge loop before? So we're going to do that. We're going to hold down Alt and we're going to click on the edge, and you will just select the entire edge loop, and we're going to press X and dissolve edges. So as you can see right here, after I made the selection, it dissolved the edges. I'm going to do this again, edge loop select, press X, dissolve edges. And this is how you dissolve edges without leaving any vertices behind as well. This is a great way to edit your model and add details and reduce details wherever you want them. So now you may be asking, why create edge loops? And I'm going to show you something really quick right here. Sometimes you want symmetry in the model. There are of course other ways to create symmetry in the models. I'm just going to show you one way that I use to create some symmetry in models. And basically, let's say I wanted to model some legs for this whatever this box is, or arms. So I know that this edge is in the middle point of these 2 points, right? And I wanted to create edges out of here, but I want them to be the same length. So how do I do that? So I'm going to select the entire edge loop by holding down the Alt key and left mouse button. It also works in vertices mode, which is 1. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to hold down the Control Shift and I'm going to click on R. And when I let go of that keyboard clicks, I'm just going to move my mouse, and as you can see, it creates edge loops from the initial edge loop, and I can place them wherever they are, and it will sort of move accordingly with the same length as the opposite side wants. So I'm just going to confirm this selection by pressing down the left mouse button, and as you can see here, I can actually do another edge loop here. Right mouse button, Control Shift R to create this thing again. Gonna align it like this, and I can select this nice little faces and extrude some arms for this whatever weird thing this is. So I mean, this is just a simple way of creating a chair, you know, if you're looking at this way, or a table. But yeah, so edge loops do help in creating detail, but of course there are many other ways to use edge loops, which I'll try to explain to you right now. So remember how we created this beveled cube? We can actually do the same with a normal cube and edge loops to create the same effect. So now you might be wondering, whoa, edge loops and to create this bevel effect, how the hell does this work? So I'm just going to explain really quickly how this thing sort of works. There's this thing called Modifiers. So if you look on the screen right, there's this tab here that looks like a spanner. This thing is called a modifier tab, and whatever you have here will be applied onto your selected model. So for example, if I wanted to create a subdivision surface modifier on this cube, what this modifier does for the subdivision surface modifier, as you can see in the help over here, it splits the faces into smaller parts, giving it a smoother appearance. So basically this cube is about to turn into a ball. So you're gonna click on this once. As you can see, it has turned into a ball. But the nice thing about this subdivision modifier, or all modifiers, is that they can be turned off without affecting your base model. So it's sort of like a application on top of this model, and it doesn't affect it yet until you confirm this application, which I will show you in a bit. So for this subdivision surface, we understand that the algorithm here actually helps you smooth out edges. So how edge loops are going to affect this thing? How do you make the bevel at the sides to be less round? Because right now it's sort of beveling the whole thing, right? So yeah, everything looks like a ball right now. But you can actually add edge loops to try and prevent it from becoming a ball. So I'm going to show you what edge loops can do. So I'm going to go into the edit mode, and as you can see, we have this edges right here. I'm just going to go Control R once here to create an edge, and I'm going to right click, and I'm just going to create an edge here. I'm going to right click, pop it back to the middle, and what's going to happen is that I'm going to create the 2 edge loops from this edge loop. So I'm going to Control Shift R, bring this here, maybe try and align it with this cube over here, and I'm just going to bring it, I'm going to select this one, alt click, alt left mouse button, and Control Shift R to bring this about here, to try and align it with this edge here, because that's where the bevel starts, as you can see over here, from here to here. And as you can see right now, when I turn on the subdivision modifier here by pressing the TV screen, it sort of does the same thing. Now you may be wondering like, whoa, what the hell is going on? Why does this happen? So how does edge loop sort of affect curves? Right now, if you can see right here, something weird is going on here. It's not like a very smooth edge right here, because I need to add more edge loops here. I'm gonna add one here and split it up like this, and increase the level of detail by increasing this twice. And as you can see, we sort of get the same idea. And of course, you can always move this around, so you can always edit how beveled you want this bevel to be using an edge loop. So what the subdivision modifier does is that it's an algorithm that will look at points and faces and edges of your model, and it will look at the distance between each other, and it will figure out how much smoothness to apply. Like how curved will it be based on the proximity of each point to each other. So as you can see, if I'm bringing this edge closer in and bringing this edge closer in, it sort of makes the bevel even tighter. So of course, if I bring this right to the edge here like this, you have a very sharp beveled edge that you can adjust slowly. And this is the desired outcome of what you want, I guess. And this is how you sort of create very tight beveled edges, and using edge loops to control them. So the same thing can be done here, except that you cannot adjust the edge loops anymore, because this bevel operation has been done permanently, whereas this one over here has not been done permanently. You can turn it off. So that is the power of modifiers, and this is what the subdivision modifier does. So right now I'm just going to create another cube by going Shift A, go to Mesh, create cube. I'm going to bring it here right now beside here. I'm going to show you another modifier, which is much closer to what we can achieve here and less work of this. So we're going to go here, add modifier, and we're going to do the bevel modifier. So as you can see right now, we are adding a bevel here, which is going to create the same look as this, but we don't have to do as much work to adjust and create edge loops. So this will create the bevel based on the angle it detects. So right now I'm just going to increase the bevel to something like this, which is more similar to what we have. I'm going to hold down Shift to adjust the increments nicer. And I'm just going to add these segments And then as you can see, adding the segments will sort of just add more polygons to smooth it. Just gonna sort of eye match it, make it as close as this one as possible. And as you can see, there are 3 different ways to sort of get where you want. This method is really good for adding bevels actually, because it's not permanent. So as you can see, if I press this TV button, I can turn it off and on. Where else, for this model, this has been baked in, it's permanent. And if I want to remove this, it's freaking hard, because then I would have to select, I have to know which edge is this edge here. And then I have to select each edge and delete each other and bring it back up. Oh my goodness, this is a nightmare. So you're going to have a lot of help with modifiers. And as you can see, I'm just going to turn this on. And if I really like this, after all my adjusting, I can just keep it like this and continue with my other work. And if I'm happy with this, I will just press Ctrl A with my mouse hovered over the modifier here. I'll just press Ctrl A to confirm it, and now it's baked in permanently to the model. So if I go into edit mode, you can see I can edit each individual edge. So I did a quick undo here, and as you can see, if I selected this and go into my edit mode, I did not have access to the edges I created because the modifier has not been applied. So I can still model using the base mesh and it will not affect my bevel at all. So for example, just going to go into edit mode, face mode, and you see I can do more extrusions wherever I want and it will not affect the bevel permanently. So you see I can turn this off and on. So of course you're going to get issues like this sometimes, and you can always adjust the level of bevel, and this is sort of the result that it gets. And you can do a lot of things with these modifiers, combining them, and yeah, let's see what you can create. But these 2 modifiers is basically more than enough. So all you really need is the bevel and the subdivision surface modifier for your modeling. But of course, there is actually one more modifier that I forgot to mention, which is very, very important, and it really helped me create a lot of surfaces in the house. It's called the Solidify modifier, and it is mainly used on planes. So how do you create a plane? Shift A, add a plane, and I'm just going to bring this plane here right beside it so we can see what it actually does. So I'm just going to select this plane that I have, and I'm going to add a modifier. And I'm going to select the Solidify modifier, and as you can see, it adds thickness to my plane. And this is really cool because it's non-destructive. As you can see, I can turn it off and on. The usual way you would do this on a 2D plane is that you actually go into edit mode, select the face, extrude it, and this is how you get your face. But as you can see, this is a permanent selection, so it's gonna be really, really hard to undo this when you start to edit this model and start to extrude edges out of it. So for example, when I extrude it this way, we add more thickness like this, and I realized like, oh damn it, this is not really the same thickness as this thickness here. So I have to go in, sort of shift this in. It's like it's more work to do to get the same thickness all around, where I could basically just use this guy, edit the base model, can extrude it this way, and maintain the thickness of the Solidify modifier. So of course, as you may have noticed, something odd is happening to the Solidify modifier, and I'll just select this even thickness checkbox, and there you go, it's fixed. And this modifier is what I use to create kitchen countertops. As you may have noticed right now, I can actually dial in accurately what thickness it is throughout. And for surfaces, like Decton or quartz, I can start entering like 20 centimeters to make sure that I get the exact proportions that I want. Whereas if I use this method, this is going to be a really, really hard time for me to start dialing in the measurements, because then I would have to get in some measure cubes and start to extrude this accordingly and sort of matching the vertices and stuff like that. Oh my goodness, this is a nightmare. So nope, do not use this, use this. And of course, these modifiers can be added on top of each other. So as you can see right now, let's say this is our kitchen countertop. This is definitely way too sharp. So I'm just going to add a bevel modifier on top of this solidify modifier right here. And I'm just going to bring down this amount of bevel, as you can see here. And I'm just going to increase the segments to smooth this out. And there you go. And this is totally not permanent. I can still turn it off. And as you can see, I still have my basic plane that I can still edit. And when I'm happy with this, I just turn back on my modifiers and apply them by pressing Ctrl A. And something you need to know right now is that when you do your Ctrl A to apply your modifier, you have to do it from the top down. So basically it's applying the solidify modifier first before applying the bevel. So I'm going to do Ctrl A with my mouse over here to apply the solidify modifier. So now when I turn this bevel off, you can see this is now permanent and I can adjust all these edges right now. And when I turn this on, you can see the bevel is added over here. And when I press Ctrl A again, now it is permanent, and it is of course undoable, but yeah, this is already baked into the model and it's going to be really difficult to edit this later on. So this is the power of modifiers, and I hope you sort of understand its usage. And I hope this basic tutorial on how to use modifiers and some modeling techniques will actually help you model stuff in your house. Thank you.